For many years, SUVs are what you buy to haul your family and to show how stylish and adventurous you are. Unless you drive a Subaru, in that case you're just practical and thrifty. This is the facelifted 5th generation Subaru Forester.
I admit, the last time I sat behind the wheel of a Forester was at least 10 years ago, and that was still the 2nd gen model. Later on, I was driven in the 3rd or 4th generation model once or twice. In terms of design, the Forester became even more function over form, which has its good and bad sides.
The Subaru Forester is like a pair of jeans, like a hoodie, a t-shirt and some sneakers, which I tend to wear most of the time. It's not because I think it's particularly stylish, it's just appropriate for the job I have to do. It's all good and well to look like you've just exited a gentleman's club, but I think only Agent 007 can pull off physical work in that attire. Because without several people on the set to do all the heavy lifting for me, this is actually physical work.
As far as practicality is concerned, the Forester is what VW used to be. The tailgate is electrically operated, the boot volume is 509 liters, my measurements seem to confirm that. By the way, in the widest place the boot is almost 160 centimeters wide, and between the wheel arches there is 110 centimeters. The depth is almost 91 centimeters by the floor. There are shopping bag hooks, a 12-volt socket, levers to fold the rear seats. Because the boot is quite deep, the cargo cover is mounted closer to the opening, and the remaining quarter of the boot length is covered by a loose piece of fabric on expandable rods. Brilliant, because when you pull the cover out, you don't have to detach the rear part. And the entire cover fits under the boot floor, despite the additional traction battery. Yes, in Europe we get a hybrid Forester because emissions. All this looks and feels thought out, just like the buttons, not just to close the tailgate, but also to lock the car. And the car doesn't beep at you just because you're closing the tailgate. I wish Toyota thought of that.
Of course, doors cover the sills. After all, a Subaru drives on tarmac only between dirt roads. Obviously. In the back, there is decent legroom and headroom as well. It's clear the Subaru designers don't think much about aesthetics and just add whatever they are told to, like this USB port flap thing. I don't know why the flap is here. Maybe to protect the ports from water in case you decide to drive through a stream?
There are air vents, the side seats are heated, there are also Isofix anchor points with rather curious covers. There is storage in the door bins, and there are pockets in the back of the front seats, separate pockets for mobile devices as well. There are cup holders in the armrest, but there is no ski hatch. But let's face it, a Subaru owner has permanent roof rack on which they carry everything from additional children to 2x4s.
The Subaru Forester cockpit is the swan song for physical switchgear. The Forester has most driver aids and safety systems like in any modern car. It has 3 independent displays, and all this can be controlled with about 40 buttons and switches around the steering wheel. Add another 10 or so for the climate control, and another 10 for doors and mirrors and stuff. I mean, this is as good as it gets without getting into more advanced customization. This is why BMW invented the iDrive. By the way, the knob on the tunnel is not like iDrive, it's for the X mode all-wheel drive system controller. More about that in a moment.
The instrument panel consists of analog gauges and a display in the middle. It shows onboard computer data, which can be toggled with a couple of switches on the steering wheel. Another switch is for the display on top of the center of the dashboard. Some of the information is repeated, other data is unique to that second screen, like all-wheel drive or climate control information. And then there's the third display for the infotainment system. This is independent of the other two displays. It's mainly for the media. It can also show Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I appreciate Subaru decided to leave physical climate control switchgear rather than moving these settings to one of the displays. Under the display and the climate control panel, there is a smartphone cabbie, which is unfortunately too small for modern smartphones. In it are two USB ports, a 12-volt socket, and a 3.5mm auxiliary input. Remember those? And then there are two cup holders and an average size storage under the armrest. The glove box and the door pockets are also average size. Next to the X mode selector, there is also a camera button. Beside the reversing camera on the main infotainment screen, there is also a view from the passenger side mirror camera, which shows the front wheel on the smaller display above. Very useful for maneuvering close to the curb or going over some obstacles. An interesting quirk, it seems Subaru has run out of space over the driver's knee, so a couple of driver aid buttons ended up next to the sunroof button.
In Europe, the Subaru Forester doesn't have much of an engine to talk about. It's a 2-liter, 150 horsepower Boxer with 194 Nm of torque. This is a mild hybrid, but Subaru doesn't add the extra 12 horsepower and 66 Nm delivered by the electric motor. Beside the sailing mode, if you're very gentle with the throttle, you can kind of crawl in electric mode in traffic or during some parking maneuvers, all on very short distances, obviously.
Subaru claims the Forester will use about 8 liters per 100 kilometers combined, and this is realistic. The declared 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time of 11.8 seconds can be beaten in intelligent as well as sport mode. That's this button on the steering wheel. But the Forester is no speed demon. Remember this before you start overtaking that lorry. The Forester weighs almost 1700 kilograms. That's on par with a hybrid Toyota RAV4, which has similar external dimensions but is more powerful and much quicker than the Forester.
The Forester, on the other hand, wins with its 22 centimeters ground clearance and all-wheel drive. But is it really that good?
In my diagonal approach test, the Forester didn't even pretend it can go over the obstacle in normal mode. I stopped halfway and tried to get going again to put strain on the all-wheel drive system. You cannot disable the traction control completely, regardless of the mode. In X mode for normal mud and snow, the Forester didn't even budge. Only in deep mud and deep snow X mode I managed to rock it and get going again. The deep mud and snow X mode clearly limits how much traction control intervenes. Perhaps grippier tires would also help, but I had cars with lesser off-road pedigree do much better on this test.
But let's assume you actually bought a Subaru to drive mainly on flat tarmac. Until you need to overtake, the Forester has enough mid-range grunt. The visibility is fine, the car is relatively easy to maneuver. This additional camera thing really helps when there is no 360 view. Soundproofing is average until about 100 km per hour. Above that, it gets pretty loud inside.
Regardless of the type of road you're on, the driver aids work well. I'm not a fan of the beeping warning sounds. I'd rather have some sort of vibration on the steering wheel. Fortunately, the warning sounds are not too obtrusive. The lane keeping assist feature not only makes sure you keep your hands on the wheel, but it also monitors where you're looking and reminds you to look ahead. The driver aids work well enough in and out of the city. Prices of the Subaru Forester started €34,990 for the Trend trim. This is the top platinum trim for €43,990. Skip options like the Harman Kardon audio system, leather seats, sat-nav, 18-inch wheels and the panoramic roof, and active trim for €39,790 sounds like a good enough deal.
I'll admit, when I was looking for a new car, I toyed with the idea of getting a Forester. The lackluster performance was a deal breaker, and the lack of wilderness trim offered in the US also didn't help. In Europe, Subaru offers just 4 models, with the upcoming Solterra EV being the 5th. But even these 4 models are enough to satisfy all your car needs for life. As you get older, you just switch between the Outback, the Forester, the XV and the Impreza every 10 to 15 years. I don't know how this car maker is going to survive, but nobody makes cars anymore like Subaru does. And what do you think about the Subaru Forester? Let me know in the comment section below.
If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.